Okay, good morning, good day to everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here. As we continue to study and pray in the shadow of this horrible war. No really good news, even worse news today. A stampede of people over food in northern Gaza. We continue to reflect on the war and our own situation through the reading of Scripture. We're almost done with 2nd Isaiah. Stephen is apologizes he's not able to be with us this morning today. And just wanted to start as I usually do, to leave it open. Were there any questions or comments about things that were said last week or in the past that people wanted to clarify? I mentioned last week that there was a bit of a to-do among some of the liberal Jewish Democrats in Palm Springs about a pro-Palestinian group marching with Black History at the Black History Month parade on Shabbat. I mentioned that I didn't think I'd be able to be in both places, be there and to give a lecture. Turns out they were at the same time. I was able to be at the parade, and it was lovely to see the marching bands and the different groups walk by, and especially for those that are here in Palm Springs and know about Section 14, a whole group from Section 14, which I've been working with. And at some point, very much towards the end, maybe the second to last group, came the pro-Palestinian group, which was exactly 6 people chanting. I'm not even sure. I didn't really hear their chant. And really, I think almost nobody noticed them. Now, I don't say this with any amount of glee. Haha, they didn't get any attention. But I'm happy that there was no issue. And this is not one of those things that has become an issue between the Jewish community and the Black African-American community here in Palm Springs. Yeah, I reiterated what I said last week. We live in the United States. There's free speech. We as Jews have to be really careful about calling something that we're uncomfortable, that we don't like to hear, anti-Semitism and hate speech. Not everything is anti-Semitic and not everything is hate speech. And although there is anti-Semitism, there is hate speech, I don't see it around here in Palm Springs very much. And yeah. So we turn towards kind of a number of themes that we've had in the past. Some of you have noticed over the last few weeks that Jerusalem as an object of or a subject is being spoken about a lot more than, say, the people of Israel. And of course, Jerusalem symbolizes the people of Israel, but in a very concrete way. And we'll have to bring that up in the next hour or so to just see what the difference might be. But Jerusalem is personified here, as has been in the past. And not only here, but in many other places, in many cultures, a city, like a nation, is given the feminine treatment in language. And hence the title, The Return of Ms. Jerusalem. So we'll keep that in mind, and something I've said before about the insensitivity in our eyes, in my ears, of using the object of a woman to say certain things, and what that means and how problematic that is today in liturgy. And we'll talk a little bit about liturgy, to Jewish liturgy today as well, because there's a well-known poem, hymn, that we'll see in just a second. Okay. So Wayne, you want to start us off with 1 to 8, please?
Sure. Shout, O infantile one, you who bore no child, shout aloud for joy, you who did not travail, for the children of the wife forlorn shall outnumber those of the espoused, said God. Enlarge the size of your tent, extend the size of your dwelling, do not stint. Lengthen the ropes and drive the pegs firm, for you shall spread out to the right and the left. Your offspring shall dispossess nations, and shall people the desolate towns. Fear not, you shall not be ashamed, do not cringe, you shall not be disgraced, for you shall forget the reproach of your youth, and remember no more the shame of your widowhood. For the one who made you, whose name is God of hosts, will espouse you. The Holy One of Israel, who is called God of all the earth, will redeem you. God has called you back as a wife forlorn and forsaken. Cast one off the wife of his youth, said your God. For a little while I forsook you, but with vast love I will bring you back. In slight anger, for a moment, I hid my face from you, but with kindness everlasting, I will take you back in love, said God, your Redeemer. I have no
Initially,
idea what all that means.
let's try to work it out. Any initial reactions? Anything sound familiar to anybody here?
Yeah, it's Haftarah.
Mhm.
Right, so just explain for a moment what Haftarah is. For
Okay,
anybody.
there's on Saturday morning when there's Torah service, in addition to what's read from the first 5 books of Moses, there's a prophetic reading, which generally, but not always, parallels the reading of the day.
Mhm.
This particular one is one of a series of this one comes twice. So anyhow, yeah, it's a prophetic reading that's done in the Saturday morning service.
Isn't
Right,
this
but
one done during Yom Kippur?
This one, I checked it last night. It's done with Noah, but
Oh,
the portion Noah, and later the verses we'll do later are done in the end of Deuteronomy. Right.
in the summertime, in the
Summertime, yeah.
space between Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, the day of commemorating the destruction of the first and second temple, and Rosh Hashanah. There's 7 of those readings, which are called readings of comfort, and those particular weeks are an exception to what Dan said, that usually there's a connection between the Torah portion, which is, as I think everybody knows, is consecutive, right? We don't skip around. Well, at least in the Orthodox tradition, consecutive reading through. And
Were you muted?
3 years before Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, there are 3 special Haftarot, and then 7 afterwards that have, sometimes they have a connection with the Torah portion, but not necessarily. They're more connection of the season of year. And we get that on a few other occasions during the year as well. One thing that's important is that there was never one uniform lectionary in the Jewish tradition. What was written, what was read, and in public in synagogue in Jesus' time was not necessarily how it was done today. Meaning that there is a scene from the Gospels that I don't remember where exactly, where Jesus does read the verse. I think from Isaiah. I think it's and he's reading from. He's been called to read from the Haftarah, the prophetic work at the time. That doesn't necessarily mean there were different lists at different times and different ways of reading the Torah, divided into 3.5 years or broken down to 1 year. And the various lists don't cover all of the prophetic literature. And this is my main point here. There are some, like this one, that appears twice in the yearly calendar. And there's some chapters, like, as Malka pointed out to me in an email, like the one before, the one about the suffering servant that we just did, that never appears, at least in the list that we have. There are there were lists that were found in the Cairo Geniza from the 10th century that have a totally different way of looking at a very different list of readings. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that the words, Dan is trying, the words are familiar because they're read in a Haftarah. There's words that are familiar from there. First of all, there's concepts and characteristics of Jerusalem that are familiar from lots of other places. For instance, Malka, are you thinking of something?
Hosea, in his personification of the harlot wife, he also has some of these exact same words. No, I
Exactly.
forsook you for a while. I forsook you, and I'll take you back. And
Right. And in that story in Hosea, as it is in many other passages, the wife who is gone astray,
Mhm.
literally the word zonah means literally in Hebrew, zonah, liznot is to go astray. A zonah is a woman who is slept with a man who's not her husband. And then later on, that word zonah became prostitute, but its original meaning means a woman who's gone astray. The same as sotah, which is the name of the tractate in the Talmud that deals with the ordeal of a woman who's been suspected. In the book of Numbers, there's this horrible ordeal that she's suspected by her husband. She's brought to the priest and goes through this drinking process of bitter. It doesn't matter the details, but Hosea is in the background here, as are a number of other prophetic passages. The idea that the people of Israel are the wife, they've done wrong, they've cheated on their husband, who is God, Adonai, and now God is taking her back. So that's one of the images, and that's a problematic image, I think, when you want to, from a pedagogical point of view, when you want to teach about something and you use this as a metaphor. Today, I think we would think twice about using this as a metaphor for other people, or a symbol. So that's one of the things that registers here. Are there others that people see? Yes,
I was just thinking of Sarah being barren.
great, perfect. And not only Sarah, but
Um,
Rebecca,
yeah,
Raquel,
Rachel,
okay.
Raquel and Rivka,
uh, somebody, Samson's mother, Shmuel's mother, Samuel's mother.
and Hannah.
Yeah, Hannah being Samuel's mother. Yeah. And many, many women, as my friend and teacher, Yara Zakovich used to like to say, if you want to be famous in the Hebrew Bible, make sure your mother was barren before she gave birth to you. That idea of the barren mother, totally everywhere. It's even in variations like the book of Ruth. Ruth and Naomi become barren. Naomi loses her two sons. Ruth doesn't have children until she has with Boaz. That's the story of redemption. Starts with it. They're part and parcel. So it's not only the poetic usage of the language in mimicking or reflecting the tradition of Hosea and other prophets about the woman who's gone astray, but it's also reflecting the narrative, the hope, the story of redemption in the narratives that we have. So many biblical narratives that start with a barren woman. And again, I go back to how challenging that is from a gender critical point of view today. When we continue to use that kind of language. I say this because, and somebody tells me I mentioned this before in one of the previous chapters, because it's not the first time Second Isaiah has used this imagery, is that there is one of the 7 blessings at a Jewish wedding, is sos tasis v'tagel ha'akara b'kibbutz banea letocha baruch atah mesameach Tzion bevanea. May the barren woman rejoice, sos tasis, utterly rejoice, as her children come back into the land. The barren woman is Jerusalem. Barren woman is the land of Israel, where the Jews have been exiled. It's this language of liturgy through the Middle Ages, even from the first millennium, that continues. And as soon as I became a rabbi and started to use this and thinking about the liturgy, I said, what are we talking about? The Jerusalem. I live in Jerusalem. It's not in ruin. Jerusalem is first of all not in ruins. Second of all, I don't know that I want to use the image of a woman who's unable to give birth with all the pain that brings about. If a woman who does want to give birth but is unable to do so, or a couple who want to bring children who are unable to do so, to use that as an image of catastrophe, of sorrow. There's a lot of problems with it. So I slightly changed the sos tasis v'tegel ha'uma. The nation will be happy in the fact that the ingathering of exiles. I say that in a positive way, even though I've totally I'm always rethinking my relationship to Zionism and the necessity of Aliyah, of moving to Israel versus the necessity of exile. The name of a book of a good friend and teacher of mine, Shaul Magid. I've mentioned him before. So that's in the background here. So not only the poetry of the prophets, but the narrative or the poetics of the narrative prose of the Hebrew Bible as well. Anything else?
David, it made me think when it's talking about that enlarging the tent and extending the size of your dwelling. Previously, when it was talking about Israel being a light to the nations, and now it's almost like encouraging them to reach out now that they're coming back.
I love that too. It's one night light to the nations is kind of projecting outwards. We're here. We'll show you. But this is reaching out. I'll add to what you said. Correct me if you don't mean this. Is reaching out from the inside and bringing people, schlepping people in. Come inside. It's like Abraham with the angels coming by. You know, literally dragging them. Come inside. And by who's in the tent, by the way? The mother, the woman's in the tent. So the tent language is also part of this imagery. But we talk a lot about a large tent or in organizational work. It's a lovely metaphor. But when you look through this line by line, going back to Wayne, your puzzlement about reading it, it's difficult. It's poetic language, but you'll see almost every other line is talking about the people of Israel / Zion as a woman, and we'll get more to we'll go back more to that issue of why perhaps it talks about Zion / Jerusalem instead of the people in general. We'll have something to say about that towards the end.
Well, I get all that, but is there some significance to the fact that the Jewish Bible dwells a bit on women who are barren? Is it to make that comparison, or that use that as a metaphor for Jerusalem? Why the emphasis on barren women?
Yeah, I think it's part of an overall package, complex of, I'm not finding the right words here, of how does it all start, Wayne? It starts with the promise to Abraham and Sarah to be fruitful. How does it start with Adam and Eve? It's fruitful and multiply. The idea of bringing children into this world is prevalent. I don't know if it's in all world cultures. I'm guessing in other cultures as well, but it's prominent in the Hebrew Bible. It starts with the Adam and Eve story. It's threatened with the Cain and Abel story. It's threatened under Noah and the Noah story because of the destruction. Slowly built up, Abraham and Sarah slowly building up, but at every stage of the way, there's a hurdle to pass. That barrenness of the woman. Of course, nobody says it could be that the man wasn't. What do they call it? Not shooting. There's some
Male
Shooting
infertility.
blanks, yeah.
firing and all. Anyway, so yeah, that I think that's it, because that gets in the way, Wayne, of becoming a great people. And that's also, and it's even more interconnected, because where is the sign of the covenant between Israel and the people of Israel and God, Adonai?
The rainbow.
No, that's between humanity.
The Brit
I read.
Milah.
The sexual organ of a man.
Mhm.
Right, that's where it is. It's there. It's very, very symbolic. That's where it is. All the blessings of having children. A woman who feels unfulfilled, which is really a man being angry, but a woman who feels, because we have the male written descriptions, woman who's unfulfilled because she hasn't given birth. Not saying they're not women, but we all know that there's both men and women that would want to have children. There's some that don't want to have children for various reasons. But I think that's in the background of all of it, Wayne. So therefore, if that's at the key of your existence as a people, as a culture, then it's natural to use the symbol of a woman who was unable to participate in that plan as a symbol for Jerusalem, the people of Israel. I think that's what I would say. Other opinions?
Yeah, I see too that, this is like when you open it up to discuss people and prospective life, it tends to represent the epics of the Hebrew people here.
Yeah. Eileen? Just unmute, please.
Large the size of your tent and welcoming people in. I was thinking about standing under a chuppah which is open on all sides in a wedding because you invite everybody to come into your home, into your family. And that's extending the people of Israel.
That's great. Can I use that at the wedding I have Saturday night?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll try to quote you. Okay. That's a lovely idea. Lovely, absolutely. Yeah. An open tent, open-sided tent. Anything else?
There's one verse that looks outwards rather than inwards. One who made you, whose name is God of hosts. Following verse, God of all the earth. So that's looking beyond Israel.
Yeah,
And
how do
it's
you
a universal statement.
yeah, and also universal statement as far as the heavens are concerned, God of hosts means the Adonai Tzvaot is understood to be the God who controls all the stars. Tzvaot, the hosts are kind of the stars that became the angels. I think that's, I don't know if that's everybody says that, but certainly.
David, who is speaking here? Is it the prophet speaking with God in the background, or is it?
No, I think it's the God speaking through the prophet. I think the first person here is only God, especially you see at the end.
I see that, but that's like it collects everything that went before. But if I read everything that goes before, said God, your Redeemer, I question who is speaking.
Yeah, my feeling is that it's God. It's a quote. It's the prophet speaking of God. We just don't have the language of Ko Amar Adonai. So thus says the Lord God. But that's not that's not all that unique. But it could be otherwise. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying there are 3 places in this section where it says "said God." So to me,
Okay.
it's the prophet reminding you that God is speaking through him.
Right. Yes, absolutely. I see them. Yes, of course, I agree. If you look down in the left-hand column, about 7 lines from the bottom, there's a challenging statement again, in light of the war, and again in light of revaluing this whole project of the state of Israel. Your offspring shall dispossess nations, and shall people the desolate towns. That's dispossess them. And don't be shamed by that. It's these are the kinds of verses when you read this twice a year, and you incorporate what you pray / read in reading in synagogue is I think the same in the church. It's a combination between prayer and study. We may call it liturgical readings, but that they're in the framework of prayer, the prayer service, but there's also an intellectual kind of thing going on. It's study and prayer. And when you've done this, for hundreds of years, that is the Jewish people, and you take it seriously, and then the conditions come about for this to happen, for the people to come back to the land, and then Six-Day War, Jerusalem is captured, and yet in a war of self-defense, not started by the Israelis, but defense of attacks coming from all directions. It's kind of like this has got to be by God. This is what's happening. People saw this. People see this happening, and therefore, if there's all these nice things that we've talked about, there's also this other issue of dispossessing people from their land being part of the prophecy. Again, I'm not saying this goes from Isaiah directly to policy in the government, but it's certainly there in the background. And that's a problem. That's a challenge. That's why I believe, and I have since, because I'm a graduate of Hebrew University, but I believe the critical study of the Hebrew Bible is imperative in the school system, and deep study, because it's such a rich reservoir of who we are as the Jewish people. It's not that we practice biblical according to the Bible, we practice according to the rabbinic understandings of the Hebrew Bible, but it's in the background of our literature, our language, and everything. And if we're unable to be critical about this and say that was then and this is now, etc., then we have raised not only a generation of Orthodox religious Zionists who believe that to be true, this to be the word of God, and therefore it's applicable today as well, but all those secular children that studied with Orthodox teachers in the public schools, in the secular public schools, because there were so few secular Bible teachers, at least in the 80s and 90s when I was there. That was part of what I was involved in, trying to educate secular teachers, that is non-Orthodox teachers. When we say secular in Israel, we don't mean secular in the same way as the United States. It means as opposed to Orthodox. And the liberal streams in Israel are still rather insignificant as far as the population is concerned. Okay.
I just think I was just surprised nobody brought it up. For a while I forsook you, but with vast love I will bring you back. In slight anger for a moment I hid my face from you. I remember reading about that. Elie Wiesel, when he was writing about Shoah, he actually used this section here.
Yeah.
It seems to me, I mean, I just can't imagine ever being forsaken by God. And that even he says for a slight moment, it just seems, if you look at the whole history of the Tanakh, even in his anger with Moses and the children of Israel, he never forsook them. So to say for Yeshayahu to say that here strikes me as being dissonant with me.
Well, one thing I'll say is that this is reflective of an idea that's already in Deuteronomy. And there's a lot of Deuteronomic. If Stephen was here, he would talk about that. He's written about that particular aspect of Hebrew Bible. That is that kind of tit for tat theology brings about a problem of we're in trouble right now. Where are you, God? And so there has to be that outlet, the what do you call the thing on a pressure cooker?
Valve.
That valve. It's a valve. It's a pressure. It lets out the pressure of the theological pressure if things are not going well, especially if people feel that they're doing well. There's got to be this moment. Well, God's not. It's not that God doesn't exist, and hence the Shoah and Elie Wiesel and others is that God was hiding God's face for whatever God's reasons were. So the hiding of the face appears already in Deuteronomy. And it comes up now. We're in the Hebrew month of Adar. The first we have a leap year. It's a leap year day today. In the Jewish tradition, there's an entire month that's added every few years to get it back in sync with the solar calendar. We're in the first of the two Adar months. They're the last month of the from the biblical counting, which starts from Nisan, the month of the spring before Passover. And in this month, that is next month because it's in the second one, there's the holiday of Purim, the feast of Esther, and that's Esther understood in a different way. Esther, even though it's based on the pagan name of Astarte or Ashtoreth, Esther means to hide is understood by the rabbis as hiding. Lastir means to hide. So Esther's God hides God's face because the story of Esther doesn't include any mention of God, as many of you may know. God is absent, direct mention. There's prayer and fasting, but God is very much in the background, silent in the background. Okay. Anything else? I'm sure we could go on. This is just a really rich paragraph in many ways. But by the way, Malka, the term for anger in a moment boldened at the bottom line of the
Yes,
Hebrew.
right.
Shetzif Ketzif. And
Mhm.
people still use that phrase. I love the fact that I'm reading, Isaiah, and this is the first time I've studied this part, the Isaiah seriously. And I get to a phrase or a word which is used in modern Hebrew. And very often people use the modern Hebrew term. They have no idea, as it happens in English as well, of course, any language. They have no idea where it comes from. Shetzif Ketzif. Yeah. Yeah. Shetzif Ketzif, a poem. Okay. All right. One of the things we did see, though, is this looking to the left, looking to the right, and so maybe I'll even sing. The Lecha Dodi is a hymn that was written by Alkabetz in the 16th century in Tzfat. It's part of what we call the Kabbalat Shabbat service. Every evening, according to tradition, every day there's a morning, afternoon, and evening service after the sun goes down or what. And on Shabbat, we add a little bit more time. We do it earlier than usual. And there are a series of psalms that are added, a cluster from the book of Psalms that are added to that before the evening service itself. And in the 16th century, and this addition to the service was created in the 16th century by the Kabbalist in Tzfat. And they also had various poems or piyutim, and this one is probably one of the most famous Lecha Dodi. If I was to sing, just to give you an example, one melody, Yaminu Smol Tifrotzi, V'et Adonai Taritzi, Al Yadish Bein Patzi, V'nismecha V'nahagila, Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala P'nei Shabbat, Nekabela Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala P'nei Shabbat, Nekabela. Right and left you will break out, and Adonai you will venerate. By the hand of the man of the line of Peretz, we will rejoice and we will sing. So it's taken a number of the ideas in this part of the book of Isaiah, but this particular kind of idea of you will spread out the tent, everything to the left, to the right and to the left. And how will that be done? Through the hand of the man of the line of Peretz. Sounds like a country western song. And who is that, of course?
Judah?
No, Judah
Judah?
is the father of
Mhm.
Peretz.
Right. Oh, I thought you meant the line of Peretz, meaning Judah's line.
Yeah, but I think it's David, because Peretz leads to David, directly to David in the end of the book of Ruth. But yes, tribe
And
of
David
Judah,
is Judah.
but important to mention David because, in other words, the Messiah, Mashiach ben David, Messiah, son of David. And yeah, okay. All right. Richard, you want to read 9 to 10 for us?
For this to me is like the waters days of Noah. As I swore to the waters of Noah, never more would flood the earth. I swear that I will not be angry with you or rebuke you, for the mountains may move and the hills be shaken, but my loyalty shall never move from you, nor my covenant of friendship be shaken, said God, who takes you back in love.
Okay. This is almost self-contained. The reason for the slash there is the way that the Masoretic text, the Masorah, the Nusach HaMasorah, has it, and the way it is in other ancient versions. If you look at the letters in Hebrew, Ki Mei Noach, the way that it's pointed, that is, the vocalization has been given in the tradition of the Masoretic tradition, it would be for me this is like the waters of Noah, that is the flood waters. But if you take away that, or if you put take away the hyphen, which is not in the text, are hyphens in the text themselves? I don't remember if hyphens are hyphens are in the Masoretic text, I think as well. But if it's in one word, it's not like the waters, but like the days of. Right? It's a simple kind of a ditography, what we call in this is part of lower criticism. Lower biblical criticism is trying to figure out what the most original text was. And I would say that most certainly, in my eyes, it should be in the days of Noah. Does it matter that much? No, because the topic's the same. It's just an interesting thing about how tricky text can be, depending on how you parse the letters and how you vocalize them. And of course, talking about the promise that God made. Now we're back to Don. Now we're at the rainbow, right? The rainbow, which is the symbol of the sign of the covenant between God and all of humanity. Why is it brought up here? Any ideas?
I think because the Noah's covenant was an everlasting covenant, it wasn't conditional, that this covenant is not conditional either, that it's everlasting.
I like that.
I had a different focus here, but the second to last line about my covenant of friendship be shaken. I always, thought the covenant with God was that he's our God, and that there should be no other gods. That kind of covenant, and this friendship seems like a new concept.
Yeah, it's a good eye. Good eye. Yeah. The other term we hear a lot is brit, or we hear is brit olam, an everlasting covenant.
Mhm.
Shlomi, my shalom, my peace, friendship, is also in with Pinchas, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that when God, there's in the priestly source of the Pentateuch, of the 5 books of Moses, there's it's very much about covenant language. The first covenant is with God and the people of the earth. That's Noah. Second covenant is with Abraham, God and the people of Abraham specifically. And the next covenant is with God and the people of Israel at Sinai. So it's kind of humanity, Abraham, Israelites, right? And then the last covenant mentioned in those stories is the one of Pinchas, son of Eleazar, the covenant with the sons of Aaron to be the chief priests, to be the priests themselves. And that's when in the book of Numbers, the Midianite woman comes and seduces the Israelite man, at least our text says so. And it's a sexual kind of worship of idol worship. And they're in the middle of the act, and Pinchas takes a javelin or a spear and shish kebabs both of them, and he's rewarded by God for that act of vigilantiness, that vigilantic act. He's rewarded with the Brit Shalom, right? Did you find it, Sasha? Yeah, it's Brit Shalom. So one of the common sermons that people like me or pieces of Torah that we like to say about that is that, yeah, because he needs that covenant of peace. The Shalom, not as in friendship there, but of peace. Some people are angry. Moses was angry. The Levite tribe are often depicted as being angry in different stories. They need that extra help from God, the covenant to help them calm down a little bit, to be peaceful. But so it's there already, and I don't know if this reflects that exactly. I don't know. I don't know, but I like what was said just a moment ago, though. I like that understanding. Anybody else? Okay, then. Let's see. Jim, you want to read for us 11 to 17?
Sure. Unhappy, storm-tossed one, uncomforted. I will lay carbonicles as your building stones and make your foundations of sapphires. I will make your battlements of rubies, your gates of precious stones, the whole encircling wall of gems. And all your children shall be disciples of God, and great shall be the happiness of your children. You shall be established through righteousness and shall be safe from oppression. You shall have no fear from ruin, and it shall not come near you. Surely no harm can be done without my consent. Whoever would harm you shall fall because of you. It is I who created the smith to fan the charcoal fire and produce tools for each purpose. So it is I who create the instruments of havoc. No weapon formed against you shall succeed, and every tongue that contends with you at law you shall defeat. Such is the lot of God's servants, such their triumph through me, declares God.
Okay. Reactions?
I think surely no harm can be done without my consent. I think that's slippery. And if we think about that so if harm comes to you, it's implying that God gave her consent for it to be done.
Well, it is Deuteronomic though, right?
Right.
It's very much reward and punishment. It's hard for us,
Right.
but maybe the idea to latch on to here is that beforehand in Isaiah, the people of Israel were responsible for what happened to them, certainly in Ezekiel and Jeremiah, right? The people of Israel, it wasn't just, as we would say today, it wasn't just anti-Semitism. They did wrong, so therefore they were punished by God empowering the enemy to take over. So I think from a biblical point of view, and in this context of coming back to the land, that might be a way to see this. What do we think about all the gemstones and Richard? Do you have any carbuncle jewelry at home?
No, no carbuncles at home, nor no carbuncles.
No carbuncles either in stone or on your body, right?
Or on my body, yeah, it's
Not a word that I used that I've ever used before. I will admit I had to look it up. Red, it's in this context is a deep red stone, and other contexts it seems to be a sore of a particular kind on the skin. Any ideas why so many words devoted to the precious stones?
It just
Sounds
seems
like
to me-
emphasis on beauty, that beauty is important to what's being built.
Also, what more? The high priest had a vest of precious stones. Maybe there was a carbuncle on that,
Right, could be code.
and then you could communicate with God through that thing.
Right, the ephod where Richard is.
Ephod, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't there maybe an allusion? I can't remember where in Torah it is to where the Moses and the elders have a celebration, I don't know, a feast on a floor of sapphire.
Yeah, what are you referring to? Well, first of all, you have that in Ezekiel, but there is.
It's just before
I know.
where there were two people back in the camp prophesying, and the other 70 elders were off with Moses someplace. And
Yes.
I don't remember the sapphires from there. I have to look.
okay.
And Yehezkel in the rebuilt Jerusalem. The
Right,
New
that,
Jerusalem will have all these precious stones in the New Jerusalem.
yeah, I think that's certainly a connection here. It's connecting, this whole chapter is just such a great example of what we've been talking about since we started Second Isaiah, as it being a late work of literature that's able, the author, editor is able to incorporate all sorts of biblical quotes, ideas. This chapter is a great example of that. So many things from the past and reshaping them into his message. In this case, I think the previous message of Ezekiel's vision of the temple for the future. Yeah. Anything else?
Just why did, in Hebrew, why did you put that in bold?
Well, we're going to talk about that now. If there's
Oh, okay.
anything else, I will, if this is, are there any other comments on this section from what people see in the English?
I just comment that it seems like the very first section we read where God finally says, okay, with kindness, I'm going to love you and bring you back, etc. And then we get the image of the flood as sort of an example of that. And this one seems to be, it just keeps building and building to make it more, see, I told you this, now it won't be like the flood. And now you're going to have these marvelous gemstones and it'll be sparkly and beautiful. It's like just building the examples more spectacular as it goes.
From rags to riches.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, the way you have it here, it's kind of split up with the Hebrew stuff. But if you get rid of the Hebrew and just read the English thing, it's just the rags to riches increasing all the time.
I love that. If you get rid of the Hebrew, okay. I know what you mean. Get rid of the Hebrew, you ain't gonna have an English text either. But yes, of course, yeah, we lose that. We do lose some, and that of course, that's the attraction of a different style of study, where which I either when you're reading the Torah when it's chanted and people see an entire section read through without stopping, or in a Bible study group where people go around in a circle kind of thing and just read without so many comments the way that we do. Different style, not better, not worse. But in that particular style, of course, you often get a feeling for the big piece itself, what's happening. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so the section that's bolded in Hebrew is in the English, right after the gems, 7, 8 lines down, and all your children shall be disciples of God, and great shall be the happiness of your children. So a parallel text, V'chol banaich limudei Adonai, right? All of your children, it's not just sons, but all your children will be students of God or disciples of God, yeah. And God will be and God will bring that happiness, that peacefulness with your children, amongst your children. That verse stands out because it's one of the most famous, used in one of the most famous midrashim. I say famous because it appears as part of the prayer book. There's, how do we do this? Sorry, I'm being distracted because somebody's just called right now and I have to take the phone out of my sight. Okay. We have a custom in the Jewish tradition to say the Kaddish. The Kaddish, many of you know, as a memorial prayer. Well, its original usage it has many different usages. And for the mourners to say at the end of the prayer service that Kaddish Yitkadal V'Yitkadash Shmei Rabbah is only one of those usages. One of the Kaddishes is a short one and divides different parts of the prayer. Another one is a long one and it kind of comes at the end of a larger section of the prayer. One of them is called the Kaddish de Rabbanan, the students or the rabbis Kaddish, and it speaks a little bit different. It gives prayer. The Kaddish in general says, we want to open up this world for God's presence to show for God to show God's self with God's presence amidst us, and that particular Kaddish gives like a blessing for all those who are studying Torah. It's a very rabbinic from the world of the rabbis, and this particular section often sums up any kind of study. You say that Kaddish when you've studied something. If you haven't, you're not really supposed to say it unless you've studied something. So there's a section to study, And it ends with this particular passage from Brachot 64. I'm sorry, I didn't explain this well, but Dan, why don't you read it for us from the Babylonian Talmud?
Rabbi Elazar said that Rabbi Hanina said, Torah scholars increase peace in the world, as it is said, and all your children, Banayich, shall be taught of the Lord, and great shall be the peace of your children. If all the children of Israel are taught of the Lord, there will be peace for all. Do not read your children, Banayich, but your builders, Bonayich. Torah scholars are those who build peace for their generation, as it is stated. Those who love your Torah have great peace. There is no stumbling block from them, from Psalms. And may there be peace within your walls, prosperity within your palaces, also Psalms. Because for the sake of my brothers and friends, I shall say, peace be within you. For the sake of the house of the Lord your God, I will seek your good. From Psalms, and may the Lord give strength to his people. The Lord will bless his people with peace. Psalms.
So this being a key verse for that little this section from the Talmud, which basically is, you can hear it's the end of a homily. It's the end of a lesson, a sermon, whatever it might be. And often things end with a blessing of peace. And it very much like a service in the church world or service in, this different sections or the whole entire service, there's usually a word of peace. And the play on words here between Banayich, your children, and Bonayich, just different vocalization, your builders. And this being part of the tradition of the survives to this very day, of people feeling that society can be, peace can come upon society when there's intellectual growth. In this case, the scholars of Torah, they bring about peace in the world. This is the justification, by the way, this is in the news right now, for Orthodox yeshiva students not to go to the army in Israel, while everybody else goes to the army, because they are bringing peace by studying Torah. This is the justification, I would say, for those that are concerned about the downgrade of the humanities in the university, in the academic world, because many of us feel that study the humanities, even though it may not lead to a particularly great job from a financial, economic point of view, it's things that enrich our society in a way that brings about a fullness and a wholeness of peace. And I guess that's the way I wanted to end today, with the fact that when we come together to study the way we have been studying, and the way I hope that we'll continue to study, is that we are building peace. We're building peace through being God's children, however we understand that to be. And it's the intellectual pursuit together which enables us to create the language with which we can talk about some very difficult things. And while we haven't had really, I don't feel we've had those difficult conversations here, perhaps because I'm the one talking so much and because Stephen and I agree on so many things politically. But when it does come time for those difficult conversations, those of us that are around the table right now will have an easier time than most, because we've already had that connection and we've built that common language. Any parting words? Okay, then. Thank you for being here, and
Thank you.
see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.